Welcome, guys. Welcome. Oh, looks like you're connecting still. All right. I'm going to make it so people don't have to wait in the waiting room. And all right, we got some people still. Oh, there's still some people who had to wait. 1 second, we'll get started. How are you guys doing today? I hope that you are excited about learning how to buy your first laundromat. Just as we're waiting for some people to jump in, wanted to just let you know that I will have my eye on the chat over there. So if at any point during this thing you need to ask some questions, or I need to clarify anything or anything like that, just throw it in the chat. I would love to know where you guys are coming from. So if you're near your keyboard, man, let me know where you guys are at in the world. And it's always fun to see where people are. And who knows, hopefully maybe you can connect with some people who are near you. That would be awesome. All right, Philly and Chicago representing. Awesome. If you haven't yet, North Carolina, all right. If you haven't yet downloaded the worksheet, you might want to do that. We're going to be going through that thing today. You can follow along there, or you can just listen. All right, Atlanta. Nice. Love it. You can just listen, you can take some notes on your own, or you can follow along that worksheet. We're going to go through that. And again, I got my eye on the chat. So I will, if you have questions, I will get to all those questions. Also at the very end, I'll try to leave a little bit of time to go through, some questions if there are any at the end. All right, let's get started because I'm excited about learning how to buy your first laundromat. And this is, to me, this is crucial. All right. Like I say this a lot, but buying your first laundromat, if you do it correctly the first time, the sky will be the limit for you. You can do kind of whatever you want to do. One of the beauties of laundromats is that the returns can be so high that, man, it makes it really easy to roll into your next one as you continue on. So let's make sure that you get your first laundromat the right way, because if you buy it the wrong way, and I know this from personal experience and from a lot of consulting clients that I've had along the way, if you buy it the wrong way the first time, it's really difficult to dig your way out of it. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. Let's make sure you buy it the correct way the first time. And again, if you have questions kind of all throughout this, feel free to put them in the chat and I will get to those. All right. So let's jump into this thing. And talk about first things first, right? The first thing we got to do if we're buying a laundromat is we got to find a laundromat for sale. And right now, that is easier said than done. And the reason for that is that similar to real estate, inventory is relatively low right now. And there's a lot of demand, relatively speaking, a lot of demand. I think a lot of people looked around during the last year and a half or so, and we're like, man, that store's closed, that store's closed, that store's closed, and that laundromat's open. And, our industry has not been seen in the best of lights traditionally, but I think that people have started to see, you know what, there's a lot of really good potential there. And so demand has grown and inventory is low. So that makes finding good deals difficult. So I'm going to give you 3 different ways to find a good deal. And I'm quantifying this as a good deal because you can find deals right now, but finding a good deal is a little trickier. But I've got 3 ways that I know for a fact are working. I'm using them personally. I have an investment group. We're using it. I have tons of consulting and coaching clients. They're using it, finding good results. So I'm going to share those with you today, and hopefully you can find yourself a good deal. Now, I'll start this off by saying, I always tell my clients, if you can find something, a deal that you're looking for on the couch in your underwear, then anybody else can find that deal too. And it's probably not going to be a good deal. Not saying it won't be, but it's probably not going to be a good deal, or you're going to have to be very creative to make it a good deal, right? So if you're Googling, laundromat for sale near me and trying to find what's listed on BizBin, BizBuySell, one of those sites, that's okay. But you're probably not going to find your best deals there. So let me tell you how to find the best deals. And we'll start with what I call the Google secret. All right. The Google secret starts off not so secretive. It starts off like this: search, go to Google and search laundromats for sale near me. Right. Okay. And I just semi-criticize that, but that is a really good starting place for you. First of all, you're going to see a lot of volume of laundromats, and that's a good thing. It helps you familiarize yourself with the laundromats and how, numbers are being reported, how numbers relate to each other, how value is determined, based on different numbers. And the more deals that you look at, the more likely you are to recognize a good deal when it slaps you across the face. All right. So search laundromats for sale near me. Check out those laundromats. Yes, sure. But like I said, you're probably not going to find your best deals there. So what do? Well, usually, the laundromat's going to be like right here on the screen, and then right over here on the top right or top left or somewhere bottom, somewhere on the screen is going to be the agent or broker who's listing that laundromat. Here's what you do is check out that laundromat that's online there and, see if it's a good deal, all that, see what they're saying about it. But more importantly, contact that agent or that broker that's like right here, usually, or somewhere in here, and contact them. Introduce yourself and let them know that you're looking for a laundromat for sale. And as best you can, let them know what criteria you're looking for. So like what area, what budget range, if there are any special requests, like you really want a strip center, you really want a standalone building, or you want seller financing, or whatever the case may be, right? Let them know. And what happens, let me tell you a little bit about how this works. Okay. So I'm a broker here in California. And if a seller has a laundromat that they want to sell, they'll come to me and say, hey, Jordan, I want to sell my laundromat. Here's what we'll do. We'll put together a packet of information, and that packet of information will have all the details about the laundromat. So here's the income, here's the expenses, here's the net, here's how many washers and dryers and blah, 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 VEN prices. We'll put all that package together, and then I'll send that out to my list of investors. Okay. And the list of investors are people that I know who, number one, know a little bit about the business. Number two, they're people who I know are looking for a laundromat right now to buy. And number three, they are likely to be able to close on that deal if they enter into contract with it. Okay. Now, as a broker, a broker doesn't get paid unless a deal is done. So they don't want to spend a whole lot of time with people who don't know a lot about the business, haven't done their research yet, who are not seriously looking, and who don't have the ability to close on a deal. Okay. So you want to introduce yourself to these brokers, and you want to try to demonstrate those three things to the brokers. Okay. You know a little bit about the business. You are a serious buyer, and you have the ability to close. Okay. So that's what you want to do. And what that does, number one is, when I'm a broker, I'm going to send it to my list of investors first, and they'll have first pick at the deal. And if all of the investors on my list pass on it, that's when it's going to end up online. So while you're surfing the net, watching reruns in your underwear on the couch, looking for laundromats for sale, those likely are deals that have been passed up by lists of investors for one reason or another. So usually the best deals are snapped up pretty quick, and all the rest end up on those sites. So that's not always the case, but sometimes it's the case. Okay. Now, that is a really great way to find laundromats for sale and building relationships with brokers. And the way it works with businesses, laundromats, and commercial real estate, a little bit different than residential real estate, is you can work with a lot of different brokers at once, right? You don't really need a buyer's broker because a lot of brokers don't cooperate with other brokers, right? So for example, say I have a listing of a house, right? So just a regular house. I have a listing. I'm representing the seller. You're the buyer, you have your own agent, and we cooperate with each other, get a deal done. We split that commission 5 or 6% or whatever it is in your area. Could be less, could be more, whatever. And we split it 50-50 usually, right? That's usually how it works. Well, in the commercial space or in the business space, a lot of times the listing broker won't cooperate with a buyer's broker. Or if they do cooperate with a buyer's broker, you need to pay them separately outside of the transaction on top of what you buy the laundromat for. So you have the ability to go out and talk to a whole bunch of brokers and see what deals they have. So it's more deal specific than broker specific. Okay. Hopefully that's making sense to you. Let me know if you're not tracking, if I'm not explaining this well, but the Google secret is, search laundromats for sale near me. But then more importantly than the actual laundromats listed, look who's listing those laundromats, the agent or the broker, and build a relationship with them. Let them know what you're looking for. Good? Are we tracking? Are we good? Let me know. If not, let me know. Okay. All right. So number 2, the second thing that's working really well right now is, in real estate investing terms, it might be called driving for dollars. And basically that's, hey, when you're cruising around and you find a laundromat, pull over for a couple minutes, pop in, see if the owner is there, and introduce yourself and do the same thing. Hey, here's who I am, looking for a laundromat for sale in this area. Are you interested in selling? Do you know anybody who's interested in selling? And when you're doing that, number 1, you're going to start building relationships with agents and brokers. And number 2, you will, not agents, but with owners, not agents, brokers. You'll be building relationships with owners. And number 2, you might find somebody who actually is interested in selling right now. And even if they're not interested in selling right now, say a year down the line, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, they're like, okay, I'm ready to sell. They're more likely to come talk to you before they go talk to a broker because they can save those broker fees if they already have their own buyer and you guys can do a transaction on your own. Right. So building relationships with owners, asking if they're interested in selling, popping in is awesome way to find deals. I've personally found deals that way. I have clients who found deals like that all the time. And obviously not every owner is going to be a seller, but the more that you talk to, the more likely you are to find somebody who's ready to sell or who's going to be ready to sell soon. Okay. Now here's a little secret sauce to that technique, and it's related to the next one. But if you go on laundromatresource.com, you sign into your free membership. If you don't have one, just join the free membership. There's a ton of tools and resources for free there. We're not going to spam you with emails or anything like that. Join with the free membership. And when you do that, the menu at the top changes from resources tab to member resources tab. Click on that member resources tab. There's a bunch of resources on there you can download for free. One of those is a template for the letter that you can give to sellers or laundromat owners who you're hoping are sellers, right? Basically on there, it says, here's who I am. And, here's what I'm looking for, laundromat for sale. Are you interested in selling? And, then from there, you can kind of customize it how you want. It's just a template. It's like a Word document or a Google Doc. Google Word, Google Doc. Yeah, it's just a Word doc. It's a word processor, Google Doc or Microsoft Word document. You can customize it however you want to, but there's already a template there. So go download that, fill in your information, change it however you want to change it, make it your own. What I do when I go in, I keep a stack of those in my car. And so when I go in to talk to owners, I'll actually leave that with the owner, even if I talk to them, because now they have something tangible that has my contact information on there. It's something to remember me by. And one more secret sauce on top of the secret sauce. I'm just full of secret sauces today. The secret sauce on top of the secret sauce is I always include a PS at the end of that letter. And the PS says, hey, if you're not interested in selling right now, no problem. Here's a tool or a resource or a video or a podcast episode or something that I thought might be valuable to you that might help you out with your business, right? So now you're giving them something that's going to help them. So number one, that's just a cool thing to do. Number two, it's really going to make you stand out to anybody else who's talked to them about buying their laundromat. And number three, it's going to make you way more memorable right? And so for me, it's pretty easy. I'll recommend Laundromat resource or a podcast or a blog post or a YouTube video or something. You can do that too. You can find another resource on some other site, put it on there. You can recommend a book, whatever you want to do. But I really encourage you to include that PS and offer them a bit of, here's something that could help you, with your business if you're not interested in selling. So I always include that. That's an awesome secret sauce that's got such good feedback from people who've used it, and owners who've received that letter really appreciate that. So awesome secret sauce. Okay, so that's number 2 is pop in and talk to owners. If they're there, put that letter in their hand also. If they're not there, leave that letter with an attendant. If there's no attendant there, it's unattended, drop that letter in the mail slot. And that way, they get to know you a little bit, at least through that letter. Okay. And then number 3, related to all of this, is instead of driving around, the obvious limitation to driving around is, number 1, gas prices are ridiculous. I don't know how they are where you're at, but we're in the like $4 to $5 range right now, which is insanity. But per gallon, what crazy, man. I think I spent like $75 filling up the tank. Oh man, that's painful. But anyways, also there's time limitations, right? You can't just be driving around all day checking out laundromats. So another way to utilize that letter that I found very effective personally and with clients of mine, and also with my investment group, is through doing a direct mailer, which is basically taking that same letter that introduces yourself, asks if they're interested in selling the laundromat, and offering a resource or a tool or a tip or something. And mailing that directly to laundromats, right? It's costs a little more because you gotta mail it. Although with gas prices, maybe it's cheaper to mail. I don't know. But you gotta pay to mail it. But with that said, you can mail it to a lot more laundromats. Now, I get asked all the time, where do you get a list of laundromats to mail to? That's a great question. I'm actually looking into some ways to put together lists of laundromats to mail to, but I don't know of any right now. However, the best thing that I found to do is to either personally or hire a teenager in your neighborhood or hire a virtual assistant to go to Google Maps, type in, laundromats in Durham, North Carolina, or in Chicago or Philly or Atlanta. And, just start writing down addresses or putting them in a spreadsheet or something. And then you have kind of your homemade list straight off of Google Maps or Apple Maps or something like that. So that's a way to do it. There's probably ways to scrape those addresses. You could probably pay somebody on Fiverr or something to scrape addresses. That'll be hit or miss, but not a bad way to go either. All right. So those are the 3 ways. Google laundromats for sale near me, and check out the agents and brokers who are listing the laundromats for sale. Build a relationship with them and let them know you're interested in buying. Number 2 is pop in, go drive for dollars, pop into laundromats, talk to owners, and leave them a letter. Number 3 is a direct mailer. All right, you guys tracking with me? Are we good? Okay, so right now, like I said, finding laundromats is a little bit of an art form. It takes a little bit of a work, but it's mostly a numbers game right now, right? So if you talk to 20 owners, maybe 2 of them are interested in selling, and you make an offer on 2, and maybe you get 1 accepted, and maybe you don't get any, and you got to do another 20, right? But it's a numbers game right now. So finding that laundromat for sale is, it might take a little more work than it normally would, but you also might be able to find a little bit better deal right now than the average person. Okay. So those are the 3 super effective ways I've found right now to be finding laundromats for sale. Let's talk about what happens when you find a laundromat for sale. What do you even do at that point? Okay, so let's talk about how do you analyze a laundromat deal? Now we're going to kind of gloss over this a little bit. I'm going to give you the big picture view of this, but I do an analysis webinar. We did it last week. I know some of you guys were on that one. And I think actually on the schedule is to do it again next week, the analysis webinar. So if you missed last week's analysis webinar and you want to check that out, we go into a lot more detail. The sign up will be on the website tomorrow, starting tomorrow morning. Just on the Laundromat Resource website, you'll have the sign up for the analysis webinar up there starting tomorrow. Okay, but we're going to go big picture overview on how to analyze a laundromat deal right now. Okay, so here's the gist of it: is that you've got to analyze a laundromat at least 2 different times during this process. Okay, and let me tell you a little bit about each of those 2 different times, and we'll talk again general overview of what you're doing kind of during each of those times. Okay, so analysis number 1, you're going to use the numbers the seller gives you. All right, that's one of the blanks there if you're following along on the worksheet. Use the numbers the seller gives you. And what I mean by that is, let's just use the example of going on one of the websites. You search laundromat for sale near me. You clicked on one of the websites that has a bunch of laundromats for sale. You click on one of them. On those listings, you're going to see some numbers. Okay. And generally the numbers that are going to be on there are, number 1, the gross income, the total income coming in. Number 2, the gross expenses, the total expenses on average each month. Number 3, what should be on there, or you can do the quick math if you need to, is the net income. Also sometimes expressed in terms of cash flow. They're slightly different, but I see them being used interchangeably a lot. So for all intents and purposes, cash flow and net income, will equate them as the same, but there are some slight differences. So net income or cash flow should be there. And then maybe there's some other information about the laundromat there too. So when you do your analysis, you're going to have to use those average numbers that the seller gives you. You don't have, access to more detailed information, more detailed numbers yet. And you won't have that information until you make an offer and it's accepted. So you're actually going to be making your offer based off of the numbers the seller gives you. Okay. And that's a little uncomfortable, and especially in laundromats, because, generally they're cash businesses and can be a little bit difficult to pin down the numbers. However, you're going to make, similar to buying, a house or something like that, you're going to make your offer with some contingencies, right? And the contingencies are basically going to allow you to verify those numbers. So you're going to make a contingency, based on the verification of income and expenses, contingent on signing a good lease, contingent on, machines working, on the day of close, or whatever, being able to inspect, the machines. So whatever the contingencies are, you're going to make some contingencies or include some contingencies in your offer. That way, when you do your second analysis, you're going to use the numbers that you discover. Okay. So the first analysis, the seller gives you numbers. Maybe you find them online. Maybe the agent or broker sends you, here's a pro forma, or here's, general income and expense or profit and loss sheet. It's going to have, here's my average monthly income, average monthly expenses. And it doesn't really give you a whole lot of details, but you're going to make your analysis based on that. Okay. And real quick, again, this is big time overview. We have a full webinar on how to analyze a deal next week. Also did it last week if you were there at that one. But real quick, what do you do with these numbers? So what you're looking for is that net operating income, the net income number or cash flow. That's the number you're looking for. And then you're going to apply a multiplier to that number. Okay. And the multiplier is the average multiplier for the industry right now is somewhere between 3.5 and 5 times the yearly net income. Okay. So you're going to look for the yearly net income. So let's do a real quick example. It's going to make me look good in math because that's what I like to look good in math. So let's say, for example, the laundromat is bringing in $100,000 of net income every year, right? On average. So $100,000 of net income times 3.5 is going to mean that laundromat's valued at $350,000. Did that in my head all by myself right now. And if it's a 5 times multiplier, it's going to be what? $500,000, right? But 3.5 or 350,000 to $500,000 is a big difference, right? There's a big gap in there. So how do you know where on that spectrum it is? Great question. Again, we go into a lot of detail. I'm not trying to like push you to the other webinar, but we just don't have time to cover it all here. But here's some general guidelines on how to figure out where in that spectrum the multiplier is. And in the other webinar, we go into a lot more detail on that. So generally speaking, there's 2 main factors that are going to get you really close on that number. So the first one is the age and condition of the machines. Right. So obviously older machines are going to be, worth less money. So the multiplier is going to be lower. Right. Whereas newer machines are worth more money and they have longer life left. So the multiplier is going to be higher. So real rough speaking, if the machines are 5 years or less, you're probably going to be in the 4.5 to 5 year, 4.5 to 5 times multiple range. If they're, 12 to 15 years plus, you're going to be in the 3.5 to 4 times multiple range. Okay. So it gets you pretty close. The other main factor is the lease. Okay. Now a longer lease is better and a shorter lease is not as good for laundromats. And a big part of the reason of that is because it's difficult to move a laundromat. So if your lease is short, your landlord is going to have a lot of leverage over you to drastically increase rent or to decide they don't want a laundromat there anymore. And now all of a sudden you have a bunch of machines with no, infrastructure to run them, and you don't have a business anymore, right? So you want a longer lease. It gives the laundromat a lot more security and a lot more value if you decide you want to sell it down the line. So longer leases are better. So here's kind of rough numbers. 10 years is like the bare minimum in the majority of situations that I would sign a lease for. There are some exceptions, but generally speaking, 10 years is like the bare minimum. And I kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable about that at that point. An average like new lease. I mean, there's no real average new lease. The leases can vary dramatically, but pretty typical lease is like a 10-year lease with 2 5-year options for the laundromat owner to renew that lease. So at the end of the 10 years, you as a laundromat owner would have the option to either continue on with a lease for the next 5 years, because you have that option, to renegotiate a new lease with different terms, or to just shut down the business and close down the lease, or sell the business and let somebody else negotiate a new lease. And then at the end of 5 years, if you had picked it up, you get that option again. Okay. So that's what that means. The options. So that's kind of like if there was a typical one, that's like a pretty common lease structure. Okay. So 10 years, if you're at like 10 to 12 years, you're probably or less, you're probably in the 3.5 to 4 times multiple. If you're 15 years plus, you're probably in the 4.5 to 5 times multiple. Okay. All right. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of figuring out the multiple that you're going to apply to the net income to make your offer. So you're going to make your offer based on that. We make an offer based on the performance of the laundromat. And if you notice, we do factor in the value of the equipment in the multiple, but the value of the laundromat itself is not based solely, or even the majority of the value is not based on the value of the equipment. Okay. It factors in, like I said, the age and condition of the machines, it factors in, but it's not the sole, and probably not even the main, condition for the value of the laundromat. The main factor in determining the value is going to be your net income, the performance of the business, right? So when you buy a laundromat, yes, you are buying, washers and dryers and a boiler or tankless water heater or whatever on all these little assets, right? But really what you're buying is you're buying cash flow. Okay. You're buying cash flow. So the value is going to be based on that cash flow, based on that money that you're putting in your pocket. Okay. All right. So let's say you have done your first analysis using the numbers the seller gives you. You have applied, you figured out the multiple, you've applied it, you determined how much it's worth, and you made an offer. Maybe there's some negotiation back and forth or whatever, and you guys come to an agreement on a dollar figure for the purchase price. You include obviously your contingencies. And then what you do is you go to work finding the numbers that you are going to discover to do your analysis again, right? You got to verify what the seller gives you. Okay. Now, what are we doing with that? Now, if you're following along on the sheet, on the worksheet, scroll down. I keep meaning to move this up and I keep forgetting, but scroll down to the bottom where it says due diligence. Okay. And due diligence is the process that you're going to go about verifying the numbers the seller gave you, right? Verifying the performance of the business. Okay. So what are you doing during due diligence? Well, you're going to be doing what I call the 4 pillars of due diligence. Okay. And let me just briefly run through those for you. And again, in the analysis webinar, we go into depth into each one of these and talk about what we're doing. Okay. And again, I'm not going to go through this in depth here, because again, we'll do it in the other one, but there are a lot of tools on the member resources tab. Once you sign into your free account, there's a lot of tools on there that will help you do all of these things that we're about to talk about. Okay. So pillar number 1 is not a surprise. It is determine the laundromat's income. Determine the laundromat's income. Okay. That's the first pillar. Pretty important to know how much money is coming into the laundromat. All right. Pillar number 2 is determine the laundromat's expenses. All right. Determine the laundromat's expenses. Real quick, little quick tip, secret sauce on that one is, and again, there's tools to help you with determining the income. You can download for free. There's also tools to help you determine expenses. One of those, and this is a cool little tip, is you can download sample pro forma. And the sample pro forma is going to have an itemized list of common laundromat expenses. And that will just help you make sure that you are accounting for all expense lines, right? One of the biggest not threats, but one of the biggest ways to go wrong with buying a laundromat is to miss a large expense. And in fact, I had a client who a week before close, we were, getting ready. We're doing all of our stuff and getting ready to close on escrow. We were a week before, and we found out that there was a sewer bill that had been going to the landlord, and the landlord hadn't been passing that on to the sellers, the laundromat owners. And so we found out a week before that they owed a big sewer bill, which was a huge bummer for the sellers. Because now they had a big bill they weren't anticipating. But also on top of that, remember, we are valuing the laundromat based on the net income. And when you add, I think that sewer bill averaged out to be about $700 a month. So when you subtract out that $700 a month, your net income is going to be reduced drastically, which means the value of your laundromat is going to be reduced drastically. But imagine if, and so our offer was pretty dramatically decreased. We still were able to get the deal done, but it's just a huge bummer for the sellers. It wasn't their fault, and they were great people. And it was just a big bummer, all the way around. But, with that said, imagine for my buyers, if they hadn't caught that, and there was an extra $700 a month going out. Not only does that take $700 out of their pocket every single month, but they would have lost equity in the business instantly the moment they took over, right? Their business is worth a lot less. So it's really important that you account for all the expenses. So download that sample pro forma and just make sure all the expense lines are accounted for. Now, not every laundromat is going to have all of those expenses, but if there's nothing reported for certain expenses, just verify that the laundromat doesn't have that expense. And check it off. It's fine if it doesn't have it, but you don't want to miss one. Okay. So pillar 1, determine the laundromat's income. Pillar 2, determine the laundromat's expenses, with a little pro forma secret sauce there for you. And then number 3 is really important. It's determine the trajectory of the laundromat. Determine the trajectory. So has income been going up? Has it been going down? Has it been flat? And the bigger question is, whatever it's doing, up, down, flat, why has it been doing that? Why has it been going up? Why has it been going down? Why has it been flat? Right? And then what can I do to make sure it continues to go up, or starts to go up, or levels off and then goes up, right? What's my plan? Same with expenses. You want to determine the trajectory of the expenses also. And you want to determine the trajectory of the net income, which is going to be, related obviously to the income and expenses. So you want to see, what this laundromat has been doing, and that's going to factor into your valuation of the laundromat, right? So if it's been going down for a long time, then you're probably not going to want to take a full year's worth of income and expenses, because at the beginning of the year, maybe you're at like a net income of $5,000 a month. And towards the end of the year, you're down to like $3,000 a month of net income, right? Well, you don't want to average out that whole year, because it's been going down this whole time, and chances are pretty good it's either going to level off or keep going down. And so you don't want to factor in the first half of that year. So you want to know the trajectory to help you determine, number 1, the direction the business is heading, but also number 2, it's going to help you with your valuation numbers. Okay. So pillar 1, determine income. Pillar 2, determine expenses. Pillar 3, determine trajectory. Pillar 4 is look for value add opportunities with the laundromat. Always looking for ways to add value, especially during due diligence before you take over. And the main reason for that, well, 2 main reasons for that is, number 1, obviously, if you can increase the revenue coming in every month, you increase the money that you get every month, right? Like, that's awesome. That's what we're trying to do here. So looking for ways to put more money in our pocket every month, but also remember the value of the laundromat is based on that net number. So if you're increasing your numbers every single month of how much money's coming in, then you're also building equity in your laundromat. You're also putting, net worth in your net worth bucket and building that up. All right. So looking for value add opportunities. Now, again, because we just love you so much, go to the member resources, log in, go to the member resources. There's a value add checklist that should get the juices flowing, give you some good ideas on, ways to add value. You can download that. It's free. It's not a comprehensive list, but there's a bunch of stuff on there, some big, some small. And, you can look for ways to include some of that stuff in laundromats that you're checking out. Okay. All right. So we have talked about a few ways to find a laundromat, 3 ways that are working really well right now to find a laundromat. We have talked about how to do analysis, the 2 different types of analysis. We talked briefly on how to do some due diligence, right? So you're going to make your offer based on the numbers the seller gives you. When you come to an agreement with contingencies, you're going to go in and do these 4 pillars of due diligence. And once you've done these 4 pillars of due diligence, you're going to have numbers that you've discovered, and you're going to analyze the deal again, right? So is that net income number the same as what the seller said, less, more? And then the multiplier, do you need to adjust that up, down, left, right? Well, was your multiplier originally accurate, or do you need to adjust it, right? And then based on those numbers, you may need to renegotiate. And in fact, a lot of times you do need to renegotiate your offer, either adjusting the amount that you offer, or sometimes adjusting the terms that you offer. Okay. So we went through all of that, and we're in pretty good shape, but at some point you got to figure out how you're going to pay for this sucker, right? And we're all coming from a lot of different areas. Some of you guys are, high income earners. You have, a lot of money. You're just looking to put it to work. You've heard laundromats are a good place to put it. That's awesome. That's one camp. Some of you guys have no money and you're looking for ways to just kind of get your foot in the door and get going like that. And that's awesome too. So let's talk about a few different options to finance your laundromat. And in fact, I have a blog post that I outlined, I think 10 different ways, 9 or 10, I can't remember now, 9 or 10 different ways to finance a laundromat deal. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing this. We're going to talk about a few of them here today, but I'll link tomorrow. I'm going to send out tomorrow morning. I'll send out a replay of this webinar in case you missed part of it, or in case you just want to kind of go through it again, or in case you just want to kind of put it on in the background and let me lull you to sleep with my sweet, sweet voice, right? Or not. Okay. But I'll send that out. But with that, I'll send out a link to that article so you can look through if you're looking for more ways to finance a laundromat deal. Okay. So let's talk about traditional lenders. All right. There's pros and cons to all of these ways to finance. So let's talk about the first one, traditional lenders. I'm going to separate them out into two different categories. Okay. So let's talk first of all about what we think of when we think traditional lenders, like a bank or a credit union, something like that. They do finance laundromats, and I get asked all the time about SBA financing. You can get SBA financing to buy a laundromat. However, here's kind of the caveat to that, is that a lot of banks, credit unions, and especially the SBA are pretty notorious for being very conservative. Okay. Now, normally that shouldn't really be a problem because, like I said, over the last year and a half, a lot of businesses were closed down, struggling, hurting. Laundromats stayed open for the most part, and, did okay, got by, struggled like everybody else, but got by, right? They're pretty stable businesses. They're what I call a rhythmic business. People are coming usually like once a week or every other week, some kind of regular pattern. A lot of times they come the same day every week or the same day every other week around the same time. It's a rhythmic business. So it's something that people need to do all the time, right? So they're relatively stable businesses. However, because they're cash businesses and we don't have the best reputation in our industry in terms of being good bookkeepers, or sometimes maybe a little too good of being bookkeepers, if you know what I mean, and which I don't recommend, by the way, that makes banks nervous. Not knowing how much money is coming in makes banks nervous, and especially for like an SBA loan, it makes them nervous. And so, yes, you can get bank loans, credit union loans, even SBA loans. However, usually they're going to want to see clean books. Clean books means they're going to want to, know how much money's coming in. They want to see some kind of consistency there. They want to see, pretty close numbers on, what the seller is reporting and the seller's tax statements, which the seller is not always willing to give up. They're not always willing to disclose taxes. May or may not mean something shady's going on. But, if the taxes don't match up with what the seller is saying, the bank, credit unions, SBA, they're going to have an issue with that. Similar with bank deposits, they want to see, close in numbers of bank deposits. Sometimes sellers will disclose that. Sometimes they won't. If they won't, you're probably going to have a hard time getting financing from a bank or a credit union, or especially an SBA loan. Okay. But if the laundromat maybe is a card store, card stores are really easy to verify income and expenses. Or if they just have good books and they're clean books, then you got a good shot of getting a loan there. Okay. here's the pros and cons of that. The pros and cons is number one, the pro of that is, usually your interest rates are going to be really good with those lenders. So, and a lot of times they're going to need less money down. So those are huge pros and definitely make it worth pursuing that option a lot of times. But there's some cons too. Cons are, a lot of laundromats aren't going to qualify. Usually the process for applying is a huge pain, especially for SBA. It's a pain for you. It's a pain for the seller. Sometimes sellers won't work with SBA loans, even if they have everything, ship shape, because it's a big pain for them. SBA has to verify a lot of stuff from them and stuff. But, like I said, if it works out, it's awesome. Okay. So application process can be a pain, and a lot of laundromats aren't going to qualify. All right. Here's the other category of traditional financing is laundromat specific lender. And usually when I'm working with clients who have some money for down payment and stuff, I recommend going with laundromat specific lender. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, you're usually going to get similar or the same low rates. The process is going to be a little less painful than with a bank, credit union, especially SBA. But way more importantly than that is, the lender really is like your teammate, right? They're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're partnering with you. And so having a laundromat specific lender, they're going to understand this business better than a bank, a credit union, any of the other options really, because they lend on laundromats. They understand the business. They work with a lot of different laundromat owners. So if you get in trouble, they're an awesome person to have on your team, because number one, they want to get paid. If you default on your loan because your business is struggling, they're not going to get paid. So they want you to succeed. But also they also have knowledge and resources behind that desire for you to succeed that can help you should you need it. So I recommend going with a laundromat specific lender if you're going the traditional route. The other thing that's really awesome is during the actual purchase process, they're going to understand laundromats that are going to work and laundromats that aren't going to work. So if they tell you, we're not going to lend on this specific laundromat, they're probably saving you from losing a bunch of money. Whereas a bank may or may not be, because they don't understand the business as well, generally speaking, as a laundromat specific lender, right? So laundromat specific lenders, I highly recommend them. There are some cons with that too. The application process still, they require a lot of stuff, there too. And you got to qualify for all that stuff. So, but if you're in that boat where you have some money and you're looking to go a little bit more traditional route for financing, laundromat specific lender would be a great place to go. And even if you're kind of borderline, you're not sure if you have enough or not, I would recommend talking to a laundromat specific lender in order to, to get, just an idea of what they're going to require, what they need from you. All right. So if that's you and you're interested, shoot me an email, jordan@laundromatresource.com, JORDAN@laundromatresource.com. And I'll do an email intro to a couple of laundromat specific lenders that I know are good. I've worked with them personally. I've worked with them in the past. My clients have worked with them. And I don't get anything for recommending you or like introducing you guys to each other. I just am trying to connect people up with people that are going to help you succeed, help you get started on the right foot. Right. So if that's you and you want to talk to a laundromat specific lender, shoot me an email, jordan@laundromatresource.com. And I would be glad to do an email intro for you guys. Okay. All right. So that's traditional financing. There's some good, there's some bad, like with everything else, but that's one route to go, but it's not the only route to go. One of the perks of laundromats is that, well, I guess it's a downside that turns into a perk. One of the downsides is that banks and traditional financing a lot of times won't finance a laundromat, right? So sellers have to come up with different ways to get their laundromats sold. So with that said, seller financing is a lot more prevalent than in just about anything else that I know. Real estate investing, if you're in that world at all, everybody's always looking for seller financing deals, and you can find them, but they're kind of hard to come by. Laundromats is actually fairly common to at least get some seller financing, if not, a big chunk of that financing from the seller. And so, man, if that's something that you're looking for, here's a couple tips for you. Here's how you find seller financing deals. Number one, a lot of times it'll list if the seller is willing to carry a note. Same thing as saying seller financing is carry a note. If the seller is willing to carry a note or finance, it'll say that on the listing or whatever the broker sends over to you. But if it doesn't say that, the best way to find out if the sellers are willing to finance or not is to ask the seller, like, hey, are you willing to carry back any of this note, and see what they have to say? Because if you don't ask, you don't know, right? And a lot of times they're willing to carry a big chunk or a smaller chunk, and sometimes you can pair that up with traditional financing. So if a traditional lender needs 35% down and the seller's willing to carry 25%, now you're only having to come up with 10% on your own, right? So, but a lot of times, the seller maybe doesn't know a whole lot about seller financing. They're not really sure about it. And so they'll say no. The next question, first of all, never, I shouldn't say never. When it comes to transactions like this, no does not mean no, right? Relationally, no means no. Okay. So if somebody tells you no in some sort of relationship, no means no, right? But when it comes to like sales or negotiations or, something like this, no doesn't always mean no. Sometimes no means I don't understand what you're saying. Sometimes no means I don't feel comfortable. Sometimes no means not right now. Can mean a whole lot of different things, right? So if you ask if a seller is willing to carry and they say no, it doesn't necessarily mean no, right? If you hit on the seller and they say no, that means no, right? But if you ask them if they're willing to carry a no and they say no, it could mean they don't understand what that means. They're not comfortable with it, whatever, right? So the next question to ask, or the next thing to do, is to determine what the seller wants. What's the seller going to do with the money, right? If they sell the laundromat, maybe they owe what they're trying to sell it for and they're just trying to pay back their debts. In that case, you're probably not going to get seller financing, right? But, maybe they don't owe anything, or they only owe a little bit, and they, don't have a plan for the money. They're going to put it in the bank, or, I don't know, they're going to drop it into a bond or something like that, a low yield bond. And so what you can do at that point is, have a conversation and just say, hey, if you don't have a plan with the money, if you're going to put it in the bank account, you're going to do something that you're going to get low interest on, why not lend it back to me to buy your business? And, I'll pay you back, at a certain percentage. So you're making your 6, 7, 8, 10%, whatever you guys negotiate, right? You'll be making that. And not only that, but that loan's going to be secured by a business that you already know. So, God forbid, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to let this happen. But if something happened and I couldn't keep making payments, then what you would basically do is just take the business back, keep all the money I've already given you, and go ahead and sell it again, right? And you've net gained all the money that I've paid you, and you get to sell it again, right? So it's secured by a business that they already know. It's a hard asset, and it can be a really attractive thing for sellers. The other big perk to this, again, this is not tax advice, but another big perk to this is that if a seller, let's just say a seller sells a laundromat for $100,000, well, that's going to be a capital gain that happens all at one time, all in 1 year. And so they're going to get hit with the tax on that full $100,000. But if they lend it to you and you make payments on it, they're going to have smaller bits of income every year. And so they're going to pay less taxes because they're going to have less income coming in every year. So there's tax reasons. There's a lot of different reasons why seller financing might be appealing to a seller that they may not know or they may not understand. So you might be able to educate them. The other thing when it comes to seller financing, sometimes the seller is willing to finance, but they want a number that's just unreasonable, right? Let's say you do your analysis and the laundromat's worth $80,000, but they really want $100,000 for whatever reason. They just feel like that's what it's worth, right? Sometimes if a seller gets stuck on a number, on a price, sometimes you can pivot from talking about the price to start to negotiate on terms, right? Sometimes you can actually overpay the actual number if you can figure out some terms that work for you also, right? So for example, let me just give you for an example, right? You could pay, let's say laundromat's worth 80 and seller's stuck on 100. And you're like, okay, well, let me take a step back and see if there's a way for me to make $100,000 work. Okay. So maybe you can go back and think about the terms, right? So, maybe if the seller carries a loan back, maybe you can negotiate, hey, for the first 5 years, I want a 0% interest. And then after that, it's going to be 5% interest, right? Well, now your payments are going to be really low and you're paying back, over a long period of time with a low interest rate. Well, you might be willing to overpay a little bit, especially if you feel like you can improve the business. You might be willing to overpay a little bit for those terms because they're just super attractive terms, and the lower, loan payments early on will help you to get a good start and have good cash flow early on, right? And then maybe at the end of that, you'd sell it. Or there's a lot of different options, right? So price is not the only thing that you can negotiate on. You can also negotiate on terms. And with terms, it means like how long the loan, the seller financing is it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years? You can negotiate, a 7-year loan that's amortized over 20 or 25 years. I've done that in the past. So that means you make payments as if it's a 25-year loan, but it matures at 7 years, right? So then you'll have to sell it or refinance it or negotiate a new seller financing deal, whatever the case may be, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can negotiate terms in addition to price. Okay. So that's a few tips on seller financing for you. Seller financing is actually a subcategory of private money. Okay. And private money is another source of income or a source of acquisition costs, fee, acquisition money, funding money. I don't know. Another way that you can pay for a laundromat if you don't have it yourself or you don't have all of it yourself. And when I think about private money, some people are very uncomfortable with that, and that's totally fine. This is not an option for everybody. But when I think of private money, what I'm thinking about is the way that I like to think about it is I'm inviting other people to invest with me, right? And there's two different ways that people can invest with you. One is on the debt side, and that's kind of what we would traditionally think of as like a loan. So like a bank or a lender, they invest with you on the debt side, which means that they front the money and you are indebted to them. And so you pay them back a certain percentage, right? There's also the equity side where, the partner brings in the money and maybe you run the laundromat, that's your role or whatever you guys negotiate, right? But they participate in the equity. So maybe they get a percentage of the cash flow and they get a percentage of the equity in the business, or they get one or the other, however you guys negotiate it, right? So debt side, equity side, right? But the way that I like to think about it is that you're inviting people to invest with you in one of those two ways. Okay. So here's the two best sources that I found for private money. Again, not for everybody, but if it is for you, this, it can be great resources for you. So number one is friends and family. And that you may have just, disappointedly shaking your head at me. Some people are very adamantly against that. Some people are not. And, I don't think either is right or wrong, but I have found, and I'll say this with the caveat of, in my own family, we have experienced, family members investing together and it not going well. And it actually, resulting in some broken relationships. So that is a possibility. It happens a lot. And I'd say that the number one thing that you can do to prevent that from happening is have a solid partnership agreement. So that if things go wrong, it's already outlined what's going to happen, how things are going to play out. Okay. So, friends and family can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. So that's up to you to decide, but they can be a great source of funding. Maybe somebody, Uncle Harry has an old retirement account that's just kind of sitting there, not really doing anything. You can tap into that and, invest with you in a laundromat on the debt side or on the equity side or whatever you guys decide. So friends and family, great source of private money. The other great source of private money that I have found is real estate investors. And real estate investors are pretty notorious for looking for cash flow everywhere. And laundromats, are pretty much, one of the, if not the greatest sources of cash flow that there is out there, in my opinion. And so I've found that real estate investors are always intrigued when I say that I invest in laundromats and are hear the kinds of cash flow returns that you can get from laundromats, which is usually 20 to 25% unleveraged returns. And so that's pretty outstanding as an investment in general, and especially for real estate investors, and especially right now where they're looking at, 6, 8, maybe 10%, returns on their investment for cash flow in real estate. So real estate investors, great way to find real estate investors is to look for local real estate investor meetups. There's one pretty much everywhere, every city in the country and in other countries also. So talk to real estate investors, let them know what you're doing and invite them to invest along with you. All right. So that should give you a pretty good head start on how to buy your first laundromat. If you want to go into more depth in how to analyze a deal, join us next week. Again, signups will be on the website starting tomorrow. Join us, and we'd love to talk through with you how to analyze a laundromat deal and get into a lot of depth there. So thank you guys for joining me. Feel free, if there are any questions, throw them in the chat. I'll stick around for another couple minutes, but if not, you guys are good to go. And thank you again for joining. Hopefully you found some value in that. You got something out of it that's going to help you take your next step. And again, I say this all the time, but learning this stuff is great, but it's never going to get you to your goals unless you put it into action. So go out there, find some deals, analyze some deals, and, start taking these steps that we talked about today. So hopefully you guys got something. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a great weekend. Maybe we'll see some of you next week at the other webinar. Go check out the forums. There's all kinds of places to connect, YouTube, podcast, all over the place. Go check it out. And as always, if there's anything I can do to help you out, get you going on your journey, shoot me an email, jordan@laundromatresource.com. All right, guys, have a good one. And we will talk to you soon, hopefully.